A billionaire catches his housekeeper eating food scraps from the trash. What he did in the next 30 seconds wasn't charity, it was a decision that would change not only that woman's life, but the fate of thousands of people. Robert Mitchell parks his car in the mansion's garage at p.m. on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. The meeting that was supposed to last until 5 was cancelled at the last minute. The client had a family emergency. The house is immersed in the typical silence of weekday afternoons. Expensive furniture, crystal chandeliers, marble floors that echo every step. Everything impeccable, cold and empty, as always. Robert enters through the front door and tosses his keys onto the mahogany table in the entrance hall. The sound echoes through the empty corridors. He loosens his Italian tie and walks toward the office to finish some reports. But a strange noise coming from the kitchen makes him stop. Someone handling dishes. Robert frowns. The new employee should be cleaning the second-floor bedrooms at this time. At least that's what was on the schedule he left for her. Curious, he walks to the kitchen in silent steps, stepping on the edges of the corridor to avoid making noise. Through the entrance to the spacious kitchen, Robert sees a scene that leaves him completely speechless. Sophie is crouched behind the central granite island, desperately devouring the remains of his breakfast. She eats pieces of bread with jam as if she hadn't seen food in days. Her hands visibly tremble as she chews hurriedly, looking around with the constant fear of being discovered. Robert remains standing at the entrance, watching in shock. Now that he's really paying attention, he realizes the girl is far too thin. The bones in her face are prominent. Her eyes seem too large for her small face. How had he not noticed this before? Unintentionally, he steps on one of the loose floorboards in the service area. The creak echoes through the kitchen. Sophie freezes instantly. She turns slowly, like a cornered animal, and finds Robert standing at the entrance, looking directly at her. The plate with the leftovers slips from her hands and shatters on the ceramic floor, scattering pieces of china and food everywhere. "Mr. Mitchell," she screams, standing up in a sudden and desperate movement. "I didn't know you had come back." Robert can't look away from the scene. Breadcrumbs still stuck to the corner of her mouth. Tears of deep shame beginning to form in her dark eyes. "Forgive me, Mr. Mitchell. For the love of God, don't fire me. I know it was very wrong. I know that." "Stop that," Robert speaks quietly but firmly. Sophie freezes again, still kneeling in the middle of the shards. "Get up from there." She obeys slowly, wiping tears with the back of her hand dirty from cleaning. Robert looks at her, then at the food remains scattered on the floor, then back at the frightened face of the young woman. The question leaves his mouth before he can think twice. "Don't you have anything to eat at home?" Sophie lowers her head, unable to sustain his gaze. The shame is so great that she feels as if she's burning inside. "I do, Mr. Mitchell. I was just, don't lie to me." Robert crosses his arms, but the tone isn't threatening. It's more concerned than irritated. "When was the last time you had a real meal?" The silence stretches for long seconds. Sophie wrings her hands, visibly uncomfortable with the direct question. "Yesterday morning?" she whispers, almost inaudible. "Yesterday morning?" Robert repeats, unable to believe what he's hearing. "It's p.m. today. You haven't eaten absolutely anything in over 24 hours. Sophie nods her head confirming no, still avoiding looking at him. Robert runs his hand through his hair, clearly disturbed by the revelation. "But why? What's going on?" "My grandmother ran out of her medications." Sophie finally raises her eyes, and Robert can see all the pain she carries. "She has advanced diabetes and high blood pressure. Her medications are very expensive. And well, I had to choose between buying food or buying the medication." Robert feels as if someone had just punched him squarely in the stomach. "And you chose the medications?" "Of course I chose the medications." Sophie wipes her nose with the sleeve of her worn blouse. "She's literally everything I have in this life. If she dies, I won't have anyone else in the world." Robert remains silent, trying to process all that information. This girl has worked for him for only 1 week. He didn't even really know what her full name was until this moment. "How old is your grandmother?" 74 years old. "She raised me alone since my parents died in a train accident when I was only 6 years old." Sophie takes a deep breath, trying to control herself. "Mr. Mitchell, I swear on everything that's sacred that this won't happen again. I just need to wait until the end of the month to receive my salary. Then, sit there." Robert points to one of the high stools at the kitchen island. "I'm going to make you a sandwich." Sophie's eyes widen as if he had spoken in Chinese. "There's no need, Mr. Mitchell. I don't want to bother you at all." I don't. Sophie, Robert pronounces her name for the first time since she started working there. Sit there and be quiet. She obeys, still completely confused and not understanding his reaction. Robert goes to the double-door refrigerator and starts taking out ingredients: turkey breast, cheese, tomato, lettuce. What's your full name? Sophie Anderson Clark. And where exactly do you live? In Riverside District. It's a bit far from here. I take 2 buses to get here. Robert stops what he's doing and turns to her. 2 buses every day? Yes. I leave home at AM to manage to get here at 7 o'clock sharp. And you get home at what time? When I leave here at 5, I get home around 6:30, 7 o'clock. Robert does the math mentally. She spends almost 4 hours a day just on public transportation, earning minimum wage to work in a mansion worth more than $3 million. He finishes preparing a generous sandwich and places it on a plate in front of her. Eat. Sophie looks at the sandwich as if it were made of pure gold. Mr. Mitchell, I can't accept this. It's not right on my part. What's not right is you going hungry while working in my house. Robert leans on the kitchen counter. Eat before I change my mind. Sophie picks up the sandwich with both hands, as if it were something extremely precious that could break at any moment. She takes the first bite and closes her eyes, savoring each little piece with a gratitude that Robert has never seen in his life. Robert stands there watching her eat and feels a completely strange sensation in his chest. When was the last time he saw someone appreciate something so simple so much? Is it good? He asks. Sophie nods her head vigorously yes, with her mouth still full. Silent tears begin to roll down her face. Why are you crying? Because. She swallows slowly and wipes her eyes with the back of her hand. Because it's been a long time since someone has been kind to me like this. Robert feels his chest tighten even more. Suddenly, Sophie stops chewing completely. Her face becomes extremely pale. Mr. Mitchell, I'm feeling very sick. And she faints, falling from the high stool. Sophie, Robert runs and manages to catch her before she hits her head on the cold floor. Sophie, answer me. She's unconscious but still breathing normally. Robert carries her in his arms to the living room sofa and grabs his cell phone. Dr. Harrison, this is Robert Mitchell. Do you remember me? It's urgent. I need you to come to my house now. Dr. Harrison had been the Mitchell family doctor for more than 25 years. He had treated Robert's father before he died and continued caring for the family. 15 minutes later, the doctor arrives with his usual black bag. What happened here? She fainted after eating. The girl hadn't been eating properly for several days. Dr. Harrison examines Sophie carefully. She has already come to, but is still very weak and dizzy. Blood pressure extremely low, severe hypoglycemia. The doctor shakes his head with concern. Young lady, when was the last time you had a complete meal? About 3 days ago, Sophie whispers, embarrassed. The doctor casts a look of clear disapproval at Robert. Robert, she needs to eat in small portions every 2 hours for the next 2 days and will need a vitamin complex. I'll leave a prescription here. After Dr. Harrison leaves, Robert is left alone with Sophie in the silent living room. Why didn't you tell me you were going through this situation? Because I was sure you would send me away immediately. Sophie tries to sit up on the sofa. Rich bosses don't like employees with problems. Who told you such a thing? Life taught me, Mr. Mitchell. Sophie looks at her own calloused hands. At my previous job, in a house right here in the neighborhood, when I told the lady that my grandmother was hospitalized, she fired me that same day. Said she couldn't trust an employee who would miss work because of a sick person. Robert feels a strange anger growing inside him. How can a person be so cruel to someone who's in need? Well, things work differently here. From today on, you'll have lunch here at the house every day. Mr. Mitchell, I can't accept that. I'm not asking for your opinion on the matter. Robert gets up from the sofa. And another thing, I'm going to increase your salary. You'll start receiving double what you currently earn. Sophie practically jumps from the sofa, still wobbling. You can't do that. I don't deserve that much money. I decide what you deserve or don't deserve. Robert helps her sit down again. And one more thing, stop calling me Mr. Mitchell all the time. Just Robert is fine. Sophie looks at him as if he were a being from another planet. But why? Why are you doing all this for me? Robert stops to think about the answer. Why really? He had always avoided getting personally involved with employees, especially after everything he went through with Victoria and the betrayals. Because it's simply what a decent person does, he finally responds. At that exact moment, the living room landline rings with its strident sound. Robert answers on the third ring. Hello, hi, my love. What a wonderful surprise I have for you. Robert becomes completely frozen upon recognizing the voice. It's Victoria. Victoria, I thought you were going to stay at least a month in Chicago. Oh, I changed my mind at the last minute. I missed you so much. Our house. She speaks in that honeyed tone that Robert knows well. I'm at the airport now. I'll be there at the house in 2 hours at most. Can't wait to see you. The call drops before Robert can respond anything. Robert stands there with the phone in his hand, his face visibly altered. Sophie immediately notices the change in his behavior. Did something bad happen? My ex-wife is coming back to town. Robert runs his hand over his face, clearly disturbed. Sophie, it's better if you go home early today. Rest well and tomorrow we'll talk more about all these matters. Sophie gets up, still a bit dizzy, but much more stable than before. Okay, thank you so much for everything you did for me today, Robert. I'll never be able to forget such kindness. After Sophie leaves through the back door, Robert is left completely alone in the enormous mansion, lost in conflicting thoughts. In less than 2 hours, Victoria will be here. The woman who completely destroyed his ability to trust in romantic relationships. The woman who betrayed him in the most humiliating way possible with the family's own chauffeur. And now, for the first time in months, he can't get out of his head the image of the humble housekeeper who fainted from hunger in his kitchen. At 5:20 p.m., a white BMW latest model parks at the main entrance of the mansion. Victoria gets out of the car as if she were walking a fashion runway. Perfectly styled blonde hair, designer clothes, impeccable makeup that must have cost more than Sophie's monthly salary. She rings the doorbell delicately, even though she still has the house keys. Robert opens the door and finds Victoria with her most radiant smile, as if the last 6 months of tumultuous separation had never happened. Hi, my love. Wow, you look so handsome. This time alone has done you a world of good. Victoria tries to kiss Robert on the cheek, but he subtly dodges. What exactly are you doing here, Victoria? What a cold reception. I can come in, or will I have to stay here at the door like a stranger? Robert sighs deeply and makes room for her to pass. Victoria enters the house examining every detail with her always critical and calculating gaze. The house is different, but how can I say? Organized, clean. I hired a new employee for general services. Oh, really? Victoria turns to him with sudden interest. And is she efficient? She's a good professional, does her job without complications. But something in Robert's slightly different tone immediately awakens Victoria's sharp curiosity. She knows every nuance of her ex-husband's voice after 5 years of marriage. You seem different too. She walks slowly toward him, observing every micro-expression. More relaxed. I don't know. Did something special happen in my absence? I don't know what you're talking about. Victoria smiles internally. Robert has always been terrible at lying, especially to her. Well, the reason for my return is that I thought a lot about the two of us during all these months in Chicago. She sits gracefully on the leather sofa, crossing her legs in a studied way. I made terrible mistakes, Robert. Mistakes that deeply shame me, but I learned a lot from them. Victoria, let's not start with this again. Let me finish speaking. She raises her hand in a delicate gesture. I know perfectly well that I hurt you in an unforgivable way. I know I broke your trust in the worst possible way, but I've truly changed, Robert. These months away from you made me realize that what we built together was really special. Robert shakes his head negatively. No, Victoria. What we had ended definitively the day I found you in our bed with Marcus. It was a moment of absolute weakness. I was emotionally confused, feeling alone. Victoria gets up and walks toward him with teary eyes. Robert, I truly love you. I always loved and always will love you. And I know you still feel something for me. No matter how much you deny it, the only feeling I have for you nowadays is deep disappointment. The words cut like a sharp blade. Victoria changes her expression completely for a fraction of a second, but quickly returns to her usual forced smile. Okay, I perfectly understand that you're still very hurt with me, but I'm not giving up on us, Robert. She picks up her designer purse. I'll be staying at the downtown hotel for a few days so we can have time to talk more calmly. Victoria, I'm trying to tell you there's no point in insisting. Oh, and Robert. She stops strategically at the door. Tomorrow morning I'm going to come by here to get some personal things I ended up forgetting when I left. Can it be around 10? Before Robert can respond anything, she's already gone out and gotten in the car. Robert is left alone in the living room, visibly disturbed. Victoria has never in her life forgotten anything important. She has a photographic memory for her belongings. This is clearly an excuse to come back here tomorrow. And he's absolutely certain she's suspecting something different in his behavior. The next morning, Sophie arrives punctually at 7 o'clock. As always, she brought a simple packed lunch from home for lunch. but Robert categorically insists that she eat in the house's kitchen. How did your grandmother spend the night after the new medications? Much better, thank you for asking. She was very emotional when I told her you were so kind to me yesterday. They're talking calmly in the kitchen when the doorbell rings insistently. Must be some delivery person. Robert heads to the door, but when he opens it he finds Victoria on the threshold, more dazzling than ever, holding an elegant bag from a very expensive French bakery. Good morning, my love. I brought a special breakfast for us to catch up, Victoria. I already had my breakfast over an hour ago, so let's have another one together. She passes by him, entering the house with the naturalness of someone who still lives there. I really need to get my things anyway, so we'll take advantage to talk. Victoria goes straight to the kitchen as if guided by an internal radar, and stops abruptly when she sees Sophie carefully cleaning the stainless steel stove. Oh, you must be the new employee that Robert mentioned. Sophie turns around, visibly intimidated by Victoria's elegance and imposing presence. Good morning, ma'am. My name is Sophie. Very nice to meet you. Sophie, I'm Victoria. She makes a point of emphasizing each word. Robert's ex-wife. Victoria uses the term ex with a smile that doesn't come close to her eyes. Wow, you're quite young, aren't you? I'm 25 years old, ma'am. 25. Victoria repeats thoughtfully, examining Sophie from top to bottom, as if she were merchandise. And you've been working here, how long exactly? 1 week, ma'am. Robert appears in the kitchen, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. Victoria, what exactly did you want to get here? Oh, yes, my pearl earrings inherited from my grandmother. I forgot them in your bedroom. She corrects herself quickly. Victoria goes up the stairs toward the master bedroom, but not before casting one more long and evaluative look at Sophie. Sophie continues with her cleaning tasks, but Robert clearly notices she became tense and uncomfortable. Don't pay attention to her manner, okay? She's very beautiful, Sophie comments in a low voice. On the outside, perhaps. 15 minutes later, Victoria elegantly descends the stairs, holding a small antique jewelry box. Found it. She shows the earrings like a trophy. Wow, Sophie, what a nice smell in the kitchen. Are you preparing something special? No, ma'am. It's just the scent of the cleaning product. How strange. Victoria smiles in a calculated way. It reminded me exactly of the perfume I used when I was younger. Do you usually wear perfume to work? Sophie becomes visibly red and embarrassed. No, ma'am, I don't wear perfume. What an interesting coincidence. So, Victoria turns to Robert. Robert, dear, can I speak with you for a minute? Something kind of private. They go to the living room. Victoria carefully closes the glass door. Dear, I don't want to interfere at all where I'm not called, but you need to be very careful with that girl. What the hell are you talking about? Woman recognizes another woman. Robert, she's clearly interested in you in a way that goes far beyond professional. Robert almost lets out a laugh. Victoria, now you're being completely ridiculous. I'm being realistic and experienced. You're a rich man, single, emotionally vulnerable after our separation. Victoria touches his arm possessively. These girls know exactly how to take advantage of men in your current situation. Sophie isn't that type of person. How can you be so sure? You've known her for how long? 1 week. Victoria shakes her head with false concern. Robert, I know you always want to see the good side of people, but sometimes we need to be smarter and more cautious. Robert moves away from her physically. I think you'd better leave now. Okay, I'll go. But please, think carefully about what I said. Victoria picks up her purse and the jewelry box. And anything you need, call me. You know, you can always trust me. After Victoria finally leaves, Robert returns to the kitchen. Sophie is cleaning the dining table, but he notices she heard at least part of the conversation in the living room. Sophie, look, it's okay, Robert. I understand perfectly. She can't look directly at him. The lady is right. People like me really shouldn't dream beyond our reality. It's not that at all. It is. And it's okay. Sophie heads to the door. I promise I'll keep the appropriate professional distance from now on. I'll just do my job properly and leave. Robert feels an uncomfortable tightness in his chest, seeing the genuine sadness in her eyes. That afternoon, when Sophie leaves, she says goodbye in a completely formal and distant way. Until tomorrow, Mr. Mitchell. Have a good afternoon. She went back to treating him formally, like on the first day. Robert stands at the living room window, watching her walk slowly to the distant bus stop. Victoria managed to plant the poisonous seed of doubt in just one strategic visit. But why does this bother him so much? That night, Victoria calls him at exactly 9 o'clock. Hi, love. How was the rest of your day? Normal. And the employee, how did she behave after our conversation? Robert clearly detects the poorly disguised satisfaction in her voice. Victoria, stop that, Robert. I just want to protect you from what I've already lived through firsthand. You're too good-hearted, too trusting of people, and unfortunately, there are people who take advantage of exactly that. She sighs dramatically. I learned this lesson the worst possible way. What do you mean by that? Nothing much. Forget it. Good night, my love. And she hangs up abruptly, leaving Robert intrigued and bothered. Victoria smiles alone in the luxurious hotel room. She planted the first seed of poison. Now just water it carefully and wait for it to grow. She picks up her cell phone and opens the browser. Sophie Anderson Clark, Riverside District, Boston. It's time to discover absolutely everything about the little girl who's messing with her ex-husband's head. The morning after Victoria's departure, the tension still hangs in the mansion's air. Sophie arrives punctually at 7 o'clock, but the climate is different. She greets Robert formally and goes straight to her tasks. Good morning, Mr. Mitchell. The formal treatment returns like an invisible barrier between them. Robert tries several times to break the ice during the week, but Sophie keeps her distance. She does her work impeccably, but avoids unnecessary conversations. Sophie, want some coffee? He offers on Wednesday. Thank you, Mr. Mitchell, but I already had some at home. You don't need to call me Mr. I prefer to keep things in their proper place. Sophie continues cleaning without looking at him. Robert feels the difference. The house returned to the silence from before, but now he knows how it can be different. On Friday, he tries a more direct approach. How is your grandmother feeling? Much better. Thank you. The answer is polite but dry. The new medications are working. Yes, sir. Robert realizes he won't be able to break through this barrier easily, but he also notices that Sophie, even distant, continues caring for the house with the same affection. She arranges the flowers as if they were hers, cleans each object with special attention. What Robert doesn't know is that on the other side of the street, strategically parked, a dark car has been observing the house's movement for 3 days. Victoria is documenting both of their routines, noting times, behaviors, details that might be useful later. Interesting, she murmurs to herself, adjusting her dark glasses. Very interesting. The following Monday, Robert decides to try a different strategy. When Sophie is organizing the library books, he appears with a tray. I know you said you don't want to accept anything, but he places coffee and a piece of cake on the table. It'll be here. If you want it, it's there. Sophie looks at the cake with obvious desire, but hesitates. Mr. Mitchell, I already explained that. You don't need to accept anything from me. Robert sits in a nearby armchair. But you also don't need to go through hardship out of pride. The comment catches Sophie off guard. She stops organizing the books. It's not pride, it's dignity. What's the difference? Sophie sighs and after a moment sits on the edge of the table. Pride is when you think you're better than others. Dignity is when you know you're not worse than anyone. Robert is impressed with the clarity of the answer. And you think accepting help makes you worse? No, but accepting help without real necessity, just because someone feels sorry, that makes you dependent. Sophie finally picks up the piece of cake. My grandmother always said, accept help when you need it, but never let it become a habit. Your grandmother seems to be a very wise person. She's the wisest person I know. Sophie smiles for the first time in a week. She worked as a housekeeper her whole life to raise me. Never accepted anything she hadn't earned through her own effort. How is she handling the illness? With much more courage than me. Sophie tastes the cake and closes her eyes for a second. She even insists I continue working here. Why? Because she says you're different from other bosses. Sophie looks at him. She says there are rich people who are bad and rich people who are good, and that you're the good type. Robert feels something move in his chest. And you? What do you think? Sophie is thoughtful for a moment. I think you're too good for your own good. From the car parked on the street, Victoria lowers the binoculars with a calculating smile. Bingo! During the following week, Victoria develops a meticulous plan. She hires a private investigator to discover details about Sophie's life, but also decides to do her own personal investigation. On Thursday afternoon, she discreetly follows the bus that Sophie takes home. The contrast between neighborhoods is glaring. From the wealthy area where Robert's mansion is located to the outskirts where Sophie lives, they're two completely different worlds. Sophie's house is small but well kept. It has a front garden with simple, colorful flowers. Victoria parks 2 blocks away and observes Sophie enter. The next day, Victoria puts her plan into action. She dresses more simply than usual and goes to Sophie's house in the middle of the afternoon. When she knows the girl is working, she knocks on the door with a studied smile. An elderly lady with gray hair answers. It's Mrs. Margaret, Sophie's grandmother. Good afternoon, ma'am. I'm Sophie's colleague from work, Victoria. Oh, how nice. Come in, come in. Sophie always talks about the people at work. Mrs. Margaret is naturally hospitable, but Victoria notices the lady has a sharp look. It won't be as easy as she imagined. Would you like some coffee? I just made some. I would. Yes. Thank you. Victoria enters the simple but organized living room. There are photos of Sophie at various stages of life, all showing moments of genuine happiness despite the obvious financial limitation. Sophie is a special girl, isn't she, Mrs. Margaret? She comments, serving coffee in mismatched but clean cups. Yes, very dedicated to work. Always has been like that. Lost her parents so young, but never gave me trouble. Always studious, always dreaming big. Does she have a boyfriend? Victoria asks with forced naturalness. Not at all. This girl only thinks about working and saving money to go back to studying. Dreams of doing a business administration degree. The information makes Victoria's eyes shine. Administration, yes, she has some old books that she studies at night. Says she wants to understand how big companies work. Mrs. Margaret lowers her voice confidentially. Poor thing, works so much and earns so little. Hey, if you're enjoying this story and want to see how it unfolds, hit that subscribe button right now. And here's something fun in the comments. Tell me, have you ever had a moment where a small act of kindness completely changed your perspective on someone? I read every single comment and I love hearing your stories. Your engagement helps this channel grow and brings more amazing stories like this one. Now, let's get back to the drama because things are about to get even more intense. And how is she finding the new job? Oh, this is the first time I've seen her excited about a job. Talks very well about her boss. Mrs. Margaret smiles, says he's kind, polite. That's rare nowadays. Victoria forces a smile. Really? Between us? Mrs. Margaret leans in as if about to tell a secret. I think the girl is kind of enchanted with him. Enchanted? You know how it is, right? Young lady, handsome and single boss. And on top of that, he was very good to her when he found out about our situation here. Victoria's smile becomes more tense. What situation? Oh, my medications are expensive and Sophie was struggling to buy them. When he found out, he increased her salary. Mrs. Margaret gets emotional. It's been a while since I've seen Sophie so hopeful. Victoria continues talking for another hour, collecting valuable information. When she leaves, she has a complete map of Sophie's life, her weaknesses, her dreams, her fears. Meanwhile, at the mansion, Robert and Sophie are having their longest conversation since the episode with Victoria. Can I ask you a personal question? Robert asks while Sophie folds clean clothes. You can. Why have you never married? A hardworking, intelligent young lady. Sophie laughs, but without humor. Intelligent. I think you need to know smarter people. I'm being serious. So am I. Sophie stops folding clothes. Robert, I live in Riverside District, work as a housekeeper, only have high school education. What kind of man do you think is interested in a person like me? The right kind of man. The right kind doesn't live in my neighborhood and I definitely don't fit into the world of the right kind. Robert stands up. Who put that idea in your head? Life experience. Sophie returns to folding clothes, avoiding looking at him. Do you know how many times I've heard that I'm too simple or too humble for someone? How many? Every time I've been interested in someone. Robert feels an anger growing toward people he doesn't even know. Those people were imbeciles. They were honest. Sophie stops again. I learned to stay in my place. And what is your place? Sophie looks directly at him for the first time in the conversation. Away from men like you. The phrase echoes in the air between them. Robert doesn't know how to respond to such painful honesty. At that moment, Sophie's phone rings. It's Mrs. Margaret. Grandma, did something happen? Sophie answers worried. No, dear. I just wanted to tell you that a lady came by earlier. Said she worked with you. Someone named Victoria. Sophie becomes visibly pale. What did she want? Nothing much. We just talked a bit. She seemed like good people, polite. Sophie looks at Robert, who's paying attention to the conversation. Grandma, I'm leaving there now and don't receive any more visits from strange people, okay? When she hangs up, Robert sees fear in her eyes. What did she go to your house to do? Investigate. Sophie quickly picks up her purse. She went to find out who I am, where I live, how I live, for what? To use against me. Sophie heads to the door. Robert, I think it's better if I resign. No. What do you mean no? You're not leaving here because of her. Robert blocks the way. Victoria is the one who should stay away from my life, not you. You don't understand. Sophie shakes her head. She has power, money, influence. I only have this job. If I lose this, you won't lose it. You can't guarantee that. Robert gently takes her hands. I can and I do guarantee it. Sophie looks at him, confused with her own feelings that are growing in her chest. Why? Why are you doing this? Robert also isn't sure of the complete answer. He only knows that the idea of Sophie leaving his life leaves him desperate. Why? Because you're important to me. Important how? Robert can't answer, but he also doesn't let go of her hands. From across the street, Victoria photographs the moment through the window with a professional camera. Perfect. The next morning, Victoria executes her most audacious plan. She arrives at the mansion at 8:30, using the key she still possesses. Robert is finishing breakfast in the kitchen. Good morning, love. I brought some special things for you. Victoria, you could have called before coming. Ah, but then it would lose the spontaneity. She smiles and kisses his cheek before he can dodge. Where's your employee? Cleaning the second floor bedrooms. Perfect. I need to get some more personal things upstairs. Victoria quickly goes up to the master bedroom. From inside her purse, she takes out an expensive white gold bracelet with diamonds, the same one Robert gave her on their first wedding anniversary. Carefully, she places the bracelet inside Sophie's purse, which is hanging on a chair in the room where the girl keeps her personal belongings during work. Then she goes downstairs and returns to the kitchen, where Robert is reading emails on his tablet. Robert, dear, I need to talk to you about something delicate. What is it? Victoria makes a convincing expression of sadness. It's about your employee. I really didn't want to have to tell you this, but just say it at once. Yesterday, when I came here, I took off my bracelet to wash my hands and forgot it on top of the dresser in the bedroom. You know that diamond bracelet you gave me? Robert remembers the piece perfectly. It cost 3 months of Sophie's salary, and it disappeared. Robert frowns, genuinely confused. Are you sure you left it there? Absolutely. I took it off to wash my hands in the bathroom and put it on the dresser. I remember perfectly. Victoria puts her hand on his arm with false delicacy. Robert, I hate having to think this, but think what? There were only 3 people in the house yesterday. Me, you and her. Robert shakes his head instinctively. Sophie wouldn't do that. How can you be so sure? You've known her for how long? 2 weeks. I know she's not capable of that. Robert, please, let's just check the possibilities. Victoria makes a pleading expression. If she's innocent, great. But if she's not, Robert really doesn't want to do what Victoria is suggesting. But the seed of doubt has already been planted. Okay, but I'm sure you're mistaken. They go up to the bedroom where Sophie is vacuuming the carpet. Sophie, can I interrupt for a second? Of course. Sophie turns off the vacuum. Victoria says she forgot a bracelet here yesterday. Have you seen anything? I haven't. Where did she leave it? On the dresser. Victoria points to the furniture. Sophie goes to the dresser and carefully examines the entire surface. There's nothing here. Maybe it fell behind the furniture. The 3 of them search around the dresser, under the bed, in the bathroom. Nothing. Really strange. Victoria makes an expression of false confusion. Robert, would you mind if we took a quick look in her bag just to eliminate any possibility of misunderstanding? Sophie is visibly shocked. Are you suggesting I stole? I'm not suggesting anything, dear. I just want to be absolutely sure where my bracelet is. Robert feels terrible about the situation, but can't completely refuse. Sophie, I'm sorry for forgiveness for this, but it's okay. Sophie goes to her bag with wounded dignity. You can look. Robert opens the bag with reluctance. Worn plastic wallet, cheap lipstick, mint candies, headache medicine, and the diamond bracelet. The silence takes over the room like a heavy cloud. Sophie looks at the bracelet without being able to understand how it got there. I have no idea how this. Of course you don't. Victoria speaks with false understanding, but her eyes shine with satisfaction. Robert, I know it's difficult. I didn't steal this bracelet. Sophie screams, her voice trembling with indignation. I've never stolen anything in my life. Sophie, how do you explain this? Robert looks at her, then at the bracelet in his hands, then at Victoria. I can't explain it. Someone put it there. Sophie is almost crying with revolt. Robert, you need to believe me. Robert, dear, I know you care about her, but the evidence. Victoria shakes her head with false sadness. I didn't steal it. Sophie repeats with desperation. Why would I do such a thing? Why would I want a bracelet I can't even wear? To sell it, obviously. Victoria responds with calculated cruelty. Robert is genuinely torn. His reason points to the physical evidence, but his instinct screams that something is wrong. Sophie, I need some time to think about this. Think about what? Sophie grabs her bag with trembling hands. You've already decided. You chose to believe her instead of me. It's not that. It is. Sophie walks toward the door with whatever dignity she can muster. You don't need to fire me. I resign. Sophie, wait. But she's already run down the stairs, leaving through the back door. Robert stands in the room holding the bracelet, feeling completely lost. Robert, I know it's painful, but you did the right thing. Victoria touches his shoulder with false solidarity. Imagine if she had taken something even more valuable. Robert doesn't respond. He continues looking at the door through which Sophie left with a horrible feeling that he's made a terrible mistake. Victoria smiles with poorly disguised satisfaction. She planted the first seed of poison. Sophie arrives home in tears. Mrs. Margaret, who was watering the garden plants, becomes desperate seeing her granddaughter's state. My God, child, what happened? I lost my job, Grandma. They accused me of theft. Theft? Mrs. Margaret becomes indignant. You who never took a single grain of sugar that wasn't yours. Sophie tells her grandmother everything. The planted bracelet, the accusation, the look of disappointment and doubt on Robert's face. And he believed the ex-wife. Mrs. Margaret can't hide her irritation. He was in doubt. And when someone doubts your character, it's because they've already decided against you. Child, you need to fight for your innocence. How, Grandma? It's her word against mine. And she has everything: money, education, history with him. Sophie throws herself on the small living room sofa. I have nothing to offer as proof. You have the truth. The truth doesn't pay bills, nor convince those who don't want to be convinced. Meanwhile, at the mansion, Robert can't concentrate on absolutely anything. The house seems even emptier and colder without Sophie's presence. He keeps thinking about the last few weeks, replaying each conversation, each gesture. Sophie has always been transparent, honest to the point of pain. Why would she steal precisely a bracelet that would be impossible to sell without raising suspicions? And why was Victoria so strangely calm when she discovered the theft? During lunch, Robert makes a decision and calls Sophie. Hello? Sophie answers with a tired voice. Sophie, it's me. Can we talk? There's nothing to talk about. Sophie, please. I need to understand what happened. What's there to understand, Robert? You believed her? You chose her word over mine? Sophie's voice breaks. That says everything I need to know about what you think of me. It's not like that. I just need time to process all this. Time for what? To convince yourself even more that I'm a thief? No, thank you. Sophie, listen to me. No, you listen to me, Robert. Sophie takes a deep breath, trying to control the tears. I've been poor my whole life, but I've never been a thief. My grandmother raised me with dignity and honesty, and you, in one moment, destroyed everything I believed about myself. I didn't want to hurt you, but you did. You looked at me and saw exactly what Victoria wanted you to see: a poor girl desperate enough to steal. The words hit Robert like a punch. That's not true. Then why didn't you defend me? Why didn't you tell her you trusted me? The silence on the other end of the line is deafening. That's what I thought. Sophie wipes her tears. Goodbye, Robert. I hope you're very happy with her. She hangs up before Robert can say anything else. Robert throws his phone on the sofa, frustrated and confused. Why didn't he defend Sophie? The question echoes in his mind. That night, Robert can't sleep. He tosses and turns in bed, replaying the scene in his head. Something doesn't add up. Victoria appeared at the house unusually early. She went straight upstairs, supposedly to get the earrings, but stayed there for 15 minutes. More than enough time to plant the bracelet. And the way she insisted on searching Sophie's bag, as if she already knew what she would find. At 8 a.m., Robert gets up and goes to his home office. He opens his laptop and starts researching. He discovers that planted evidence is more common than he imagined, especially in cases involving domestic employees. He reads stories of innocent people destroyed by false accusations. The sun rises and finds Robert still at the computer, with dark circles under his eyes and a growing conviction that he made a terrible mistake. He picks up his phone and calls Dr. Harrison. Robert, it's 7 in the morning. Is everything okay? Dr. Harrison, I need to ask you something. When you examined Sophie that day, what was your professional impression of her? Professional impression? She was severely malnourished, dehydrated. But what struck me most was her character. Her character? Robert, I've been a doctor for 40 years. I know how to read people. That girl has integrity. She was embarrassed to accept help, concerned about being a burden. Those aren't characteristics of someone who would steal. Thank you, Dr. Harrison. That's what I needed to hear. Robert hangs up and makes another decision. He calls his lawyer. James, I need you to investigate something for me. Discreetly, later that morning, Victoria calls as if nothing had happened. Good morning, my love. How did you sleep? Terribly. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. But you did the right thing, you know? Sometimes we need to make difficult decisions. Victoria, I need to ask you something. Of course, anything. Why did you go upstairs alone yesterday? I could have gone with you to get the earrings. Brief silence on the other end of the line. What kind of question is that? I know where my things are, but you stayed up there for 15 minutes. What were you doing all that time? Robert, are you insinuating something? Victoria's voice becomes cold. I'm just trying to understand the timeline of events. I can't believe you're doubting me after I was the victim of a theft in your house. Our house. And I'm not doubting. I'm investigating. Investigating? Robert, the evidence was clear. The bracelet was in her bag? Yes, conveniently in her bag after you spent 15 minutes alone in the room where she keeps her belongings. How dare you accuse me of something like this? Victoria screams. You know what? I think you're more involved with that girl than you want to admit. Maybe I am. The confession surprises even Robert himself. What? Maybe I'm involved, Victoria. Maybe I care about her more than I should. But that doesn't change the fact that something doesn't add up in your story. I don't need to listen to this. Victoria hangs up furiously. Robert feels a strange sense of relief. For the first time since Victoria left, he feels he's thinking clearly. Meanwhile, Sophie is at home, helping her grandmother with housework, trying to keep her mind occupied. Mrs. Margaret watches her granddaughter with concern. You need to eat something, child. I'm not hungry, Grandma. Sophie Anderson Clark, I raised you better than this. You don't give up when things get tough. This is different, Grandma. He thinks I'm a thief. Then prove you're not. How? By holding your head high and continuing to live with dignity. The truth always comes out. At that moment, the doorbell rings. Sophie goes to answer and finds Robert standing at the door, holding a folder. Can we talk? I have nothing to say to you. Sophie tries to close the door, but Robert holds it. Please, Sophie. 5 minutes. Mrs. Margaret appears behind her granddaughter. Let the boy come in. Sophie, I want to hear what he has to say. They sit in the small but tidy living room. Robert looks uncomfortable, but determined. Sophie, I made a terrible mistake. I should have trusted you from the beginning. And why didn't you? Because I let my past experiences with Victoria cloud my judgment. She betrayed me before. And I was so afraid of being fooled again that I couldn't see she was manipulating me. Sophie crosses her arms, still hurt. And now? What changed? I investigated. I talked to people. I reviewed everything that happened. Robert opens the folder. Victoria stayed alone in the room for exactly 17 minutes. More than enough time to plant the bracelet. And I found something else. What? I checked my security system. I have cameras in the hallways. Look at this. Robert shows his phone with a video. It shows Victoria entering the bedroom with her purse, staying inside for a long time, and coming out without the purse. She left her purse in the room. Why would she do that if she was just getting earrings? Sophie watches the video with wide eyes. This doesn't prove she planted the bracelet. No, but it creates reasonable doubt. And there's more. Robert pulls out papers from the folder. My lawyer discovered that Victoria did something similar in her previous job. Before we met, she accused a store employee of theft, but the case was dismissed due to lack of evidence. Mrs. Margaret leans forward. So this woman has a history? Yes, and I was too blind to see it. Robert turns to Sophie. I'm so sorry, Sophie. I failed you when you needed me most. I let someone poison my mind against you. Sophie feels tears forming. Do you really believe I'm innocent? I don't just believe it, I know it, and I'm going to prove it. Robert takes her hands. I'm going to confront Victoria and get her to confess. She'll never confess, then I'll make her slip up. But first, I need to know if you can forgive me. Sophie looks at their joined hands, then at his sincere eyes. You hurt me, Robert. You made me feel worthless. I know, and I'll spend as long as it takes making it up to you. Why? Why is this so important to you? Robert takes a deep breath. Because somewhere between you fainting in my kitchen and now, I fell in love with you. The confession hangs in the air. Mrs. Margaret discreetly leaves the room, leaving them alone. You. What? Sophie can barely process the words. I fell in love with you. Your honesty, your strength, your dignity. The way you care about your grandmother more than yourself. The way you see the good in people even when they don't deserve it. Robert, we're from different worlds. I don't care about worlds. I care about you. Robert moves closer. And I think, maybe, you care about me too. Sophie can't deny it anymore. I do. But that doesn't change the fact that Victoria has power over you. Not anymore. I'm done letting her control my life. Robert stands up, determined. Will you come back to work for me? As your housekeeper? As whatever you want to be. Housekeeper, friend, partner. I just need you in my life. Sophie smiles through tears. Let me think about it. Fair enough. Robert heads to the door, then turns back. Oh, and Sophie, your salary is tripled, regardless of what you decide about us. After Robert leaves, Mrs. Margaret returns to the living room with a knowing smile. That boy is in love with you, Grandma. It's complicated. Love always is. But it's also simple. He made a mistake, he admitted it, and he's trying to fix it. That's more than most men do. But Victoria, that woman will get what she deserves. Mark my words. Mrs. Margaret sits next to her granddaughter. Now, are you going to tell me you don't love him too? Sophie blushes. Is it that obvious? Child, I've seen you floating on clouds for weeks. You talk about him all the time. But what if it doesn't work out? What if we're too different? Your grandfather was a factory worker, and I was a maid. Everyone said it wouldn't work. We had 45 beautiful years together until he passed. Mrs. Margaret takes Sophie's hand. Don't let fear rob you of happiness. That night, Robert prepares his confrontation with Victoria. He calls her and invites her to dinner at an expensive restaurant downtown. Really? Oh, Robert, I knew you'd come to your senses. We need to talk, of course, my love. I'll see you at 8. Robert arrives early and sets up a small recording device in his jacket pocket. When Victoria arrives, stunning as always, she kisses his cheek and sits down. I'm so glad you called. I was worried about our last conversation, were you? Robert signals the waiter for wine. Yes. I thought maybe you were upset with me. Why would I be upset, Victoria? Robert looks directly at her. You helped me discover that my employee was a thief. Victoria shifts uncomfortably. Well, yes. It was painful, but necessary. Tell me something. How exactly did you discover the bracelet was missing? I already told you. I took it off to wash my hands and forgot it on the dresser. And you only noticed it was missing the next day? Yes, that's right. Strange. Because the bracelet was very important to you. Your grandmother's inheritance, right? You'd think you'd notice immediately. Victoria takes a sip of wine. Where are you going with this, Robert? I'm just trying to understand the sequence of events. You came to the house, went upstairs, stayed there for 17 minutes. How do you know how long I stayed there? Security cameras in the hallways. Robert leans forward. Why did you leave your purse in the room, Victoria? I don't remember leaving it there, but you did. The cameras show you entering with the purse and coming out without it. Why? Victoria's face becomes pale. Maybe I put it down to look for the earrings. For 17 minutes. Robert pulls out his phone and shows the video. What were you really doing in that room? I don't have to answer your interrogation. No, you don't. But my lawyer found something interesting. Robert places papers on the table. You accused someone of theft before, didn't you? At the department store where you worked before we met? Victoria stands up abruptly. That's different. Is it? Or is this your pattern? Destroying innocent people when they get in your way? That girl was getting in my way. Victoria screams, then covers her mouth, realizing what she said. So you admit it? Robert also stands up. You planted the bracelet. No. You're twisting my words, Victoria. I have it all recorded. Robert taps his jacket. Your confession, your admission. It's over. Victoria's face transforms from shock to rage. You tricked me. I learned from the best. Robert throws money on the table. Stay away from me, and stay away from Sophie. If you come near either of us again, I'll take this recording to the police. You wouldn't dare. It would be a scandal. I don't care anymore. I'm tired of your games. Robert heads to the exit. Goodbye, Victoria. He leaves the restaurant feeling lighter than he has in months. The next morning, Robert shows up at Sophie's house at a.m. She opens the door in her pajamas, clearly having just woken up. Robert, what are you doing here so early? I got her confession. He plays the recording on his phone. Sophie listens with her mouth open, tears streaming down her face. She really did it. She really planted the bracelet. Yes. And I'm so sorry I doubted you even for a second. Robert wipes her tears. Can you forgive me? Sophie throws her arms around him. You fought for me. You believed in me. Always. Robert holds her tight. Now, about that job offer. I'll take it. But not as your housekeeper. Sophie pulls back to look at him. What then? As your girlfriend, if you'll have me. Robert smiles. Best job application I've ever received. They kiss for the first time, right there on the doorstep, while Mrs. Margaret watches from the window with a satisfied smile. 3 months later, Sophie is enrolled in business administration classes at the local university, paid for by Robert. She still works at the mansion, but now is Robert's partner in every sense of the word. Victoria tried to cause more trouble, but the recording Robert had was enough to keep her away permanently. She moved to another city, defeated and alone. One evening, as they watch the sunset from the mansion's terrace, Sophie turns to Robert. "Do you ever regret it, choosing me over your old life?" "Never. You're the best thing that ever happened to me." Robert pulls her close. "You taught me what real love looks like. Not the fake, superficial kind I had before, but genuine, honest love. I love you too." Sophie rests her head on his shoulder. "Thank you for seeing past what everyone else saw. Thank you for teaching me to see with my heart instead of my eyes." Mrs. Margaret, who now lives in the mansion's guest house, joins them with 3 cups of tea. "You two are disgustingly adorable, you know that?" They all laugh, and in that moment, surrounded by genuine love and acceptance, Sophie realizes that sometimes the most beautiful love stories start in the most unexpected places, with the most unlikely people. And as for Victoria, she learned the hard way that manipulation and lies might win battles, but genuine love and truth always win the war. Hey, beautiful soul, if you made it to the end of this incredible story, I need to ask you for a huge favor. Smash that subscribe button right now, because you're part of this amazing community that believes in real love, second chances, and the power of truth. I want to know your thoughts. Have you ever been in a situation where someone doubted your integrity? Or maybe you've been the one who made a wrong judgment about someone? Share your story in the comments below. Let's create a space where we lift each other up and learn from these experiences together. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. And if this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to believe that good things happen to good people. Let's spread this message of hope and love together. See you in the next video. And remember, your worth is never determined by someone else's inability to see your value. Keep shining.